Welcome guys to a quick run through. Let me introduce you to, for those of you who aren't familiar to it, to a little thing called Boston, USA's The Big Dig. It was overpriced, infiltrated by corruption, had all manner of government policy problems and what have you. Not the big build, as in Victoria's big build. We're talking about The Big Dig. Have a quick look.
7.8 miles of highway, 161 lane miles, about half of it in tunnels under one of America's oldest and densest cities. That's a genuine achievement. The $24 billion lay. Now,
Lie. We're familiar with lie, right? In Victoria, we all know lie.
Let's talk about the money, because this is where the big dig becomes a scandal. In the early 1980s, when the project was first proposed, the cost estimate was around $2.6 to $3 billion. By the 1990s, when construction was underway, the official budget was $10.8 billion.
Sound familiar, Victorians?
Project managers publicly clung to that number, even as internal data showed costs were spiraling out of control. In 2000, a federal audit projected the real cost at $13.6 billion. But even that was conservative. When you include interest on the debt that Massachusetts took on to finance the project, the all-in cost is estimated at $24 billion or more. Think about that. A project that was supposed to cost $2.6 billion ended up costing nearly 10 times that amount.
Well, blow me over and tickle my feet with a feather. Who would have thunk?
How did this happen? Part of it was legitimate scope growth. The project got bigger, more tunnels, more ramps, more complexity. That drives up costs, but a huge part of it was deliberate deception.
Really?
Here's what they did. They dropped legitimate expenses from the Big Dig budget and reclassified them as other agencies' costs. About $300 million just disappeared from the official tally. They counted speculative income from future air rights sales, $255 million, as if it were certain revenue, even though those sales hadn't happened yet and might never happen. They consumed an $826 million insurance credit decades earlier than it would actually be available, just to make the budget look balanced on paper. They delayed budgeting for about $260 million in management and design contracts with Bechtel and Parsons Brinckerhoff, the program managers. Those costs were real and ongoing, but they kept them off the books as long as possible. The monthly budget reports became virtual fiction. They showed the project staying within the $10.8 billion cap, even as everyone involved knew the real number was much higher.
They did not. They did that? Who's they?
And when the week, the Turnpike Authority failed to penalize poor performance or design errors. Design contract costs rose 82% compared to the original bids. Construction contracts went up 17%. That's a sign of massive design stage change and scope creep. There was chronic underestimation of risks and overuse of optimistic assumptions in schedules and budgets. When problems arose, the response was to hide them rather than address them. The program managers had enormous power and very little accountability. They controlled the budget, they controlled the schedule, they controlled the information flow to the public and to oversight agencies, and they used that control to maintain the fiction that the project was on track. Federal auditors and inspectors general raised red flags repeatedly. They warned that the cost estimates were unrealistic. They questioned the accounting methods. They called for independent reviews. Those warnings were ignored or dismissed.
Sounds very, very familiar, right? Doing this the quick way. So first, here's something I stumbled across. The Big Dig, learning from a mega project. I think it's NASA. The Big Dig is also famous for cost increases. This is 1980s this started, finishing around 2009 or something. And it was well known for being what? Infiltrated by organised crime. Its initial estimated cost was $2.56 billion. Estimates increased to $7.74 billion in 92 to $10.4 billion in 94, and finally $14.8 billion in 2007. More than 5 times the original estimate. Wait. Now here you have, this is actual FBI press release or archives footage or document where a underworld figure is sentenced to 6 years prison for his role in the Big Dig, Boston's Big Dig. Point to this is, how can our experts not be aware of this? How can our experts, our government people paid massive money, you all saw and heard publicly about $600 million consultancy for things like Commonwealth Games that we don't even end up having. You've all heard of $1.1 billion ghost prisons sitting completely empty, costing another $50 million a year to staff, sitting empty, $50 million a year to run it, with no inmates in it. So my point is, these people getting paid massive public money, massive taxpayer money, I did that in 2 minutes. 2 minutes I dug all this up. I had a quick look. I didn't need $600 million consultancy fees to say, okay, we've got to be aware of this. Well, hang on, we better learn from this city's mistakes. 2 minutes I put this together. Are you kidding? And our Jacinta Allens and our experts, our Daniel, there is only one way this could happen, and it's with intent. It's clearly, it has to be. You couldn't accidentally do it. You couldn't accidentally plunder a state dry of so much money and pretend like, oh, we couldn't have foreseen this. How could we have known?